Okay, and welcome. Today we're going to talk about a couple of rules that we use very early on in your guys' photography careers to help to improve your composition. Now, in photography especially, you'll hear the phrase rules, but in fact they're kind of more like guidelines. There's nothing that's absolutely concrete or set in stone, okay? So just keep in mind that all the examples I'm going to give you, you'd be able to find 1,000 or millions of examples online that would break those rules. The important part for us early on is understanding how the rules work, applying to our photos, getting good enough to use them, and then essentially learning how to break them. So just again, a quick review here. They're not concrete, they're more like guidelines. It's important that we learn how to use those rules before you can go ahead and break them. And another really important point that I should make early on is that there's lots of composition techniques in art, in photography, and we're just going to focus on two of them very early on to try to improve your compositions as quickly as possible. And I think that these two are going to help you more than any others in improving your compositional framing of your images sooner than in any of the others. So essentially what we want to go from is an image like this, which is, if I went to your guys' Facebook page, I would see something like this on your Facebook page. So we want to go for something like this to something like this, where you've actually considered the composition. Okay, so how are we going to go about doing that? Well, here are the two basic rules. There's the rule of thirds, and we're going to talk about these a little bit more in depth, but essentially you're just going to divide the frame into thirds and place the emphasis in intersecting areas. If I was to explain it to you guys like your 5-year-olds, don't put your subject in the middle of the frame, okay? And then the other one that we're going to learn about is fill the frame. And again, really easy. Basically just states, listen, whatever your subject, your emphasis is, fill your frame with the subject. Don't leave lots of unnecessary or unwanted areas inside of your frame. So let's dig a little bit deeper into the two compositional techniques. Okay, so the first is the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds, like I said, you basically create a grid, kind of like a tic-tac-toe grid here, where you divide the frame into thirds, both horizontally and vertically. Most cameras that have come out in the last 4 or 5 years have the ability to actually show you this while you're taking the image on the back LCD screen, especially on point-and-shoot cameras, but like even my iPhone's got this. You just need to dig in the menus and look for grid, and it'll give you this grid to kind of help you with your composition. Okay, basically the rule of thirds is stating that we don't want to place our subject in the middle of the frame because it's less appealing to the eye. So essentially, again, we are trying to place the subject off to one side, and the recommendation is to try to place the subject in one of the intersecting areas, so one of these four, or either on the horizontal lines, we'll talk about those in landscapes, or on the vertical lines. Now, this is certainly not an exact science. You can see that, right, the intersecting areas right here, and her face, the middle of her face, her nose, or her eyes, they're not on it. And again, it's not an exact science. We just want to try to visualize when we are looking at our compositions, applying the rule of thirds. So let's take a look at a few more examples. So this would be one of those examples where we have our subject going down one of the vertical lines. Okay, you can see his head's pretty close to this. Is it dead on? No, but the point here is he's not in the middle of the frame. Okay, another excellent example. We got some dancers here. Okay, is her face like right on the intersecting area? No. Okay, but the point is she is not right in the middle of the frame. I really like this shot because, when we first look at this, your eye is automatically drawn to this, and then it's kind of got this diagonal that just leads your eye throughout. Now, when you are dealing with horizon lines, so landscapes, or even when you're shooting subjects and there's a horizon in the background, the rules are that you need to place the horizon line, again, not in the middle of the frame, but on one of the two horizontal lines. And basically, Brian Peterson, who's one of my favorite photographers, kind of uses the analogy of like sports. And in professional sports, you don't want to have ties. Okay, you want to have a winner, and the same is true for photography. So when you're shooting landscapes, decide, okay, which is the winner? Is it the sky or is it the foreground? Okay, and in this instance, he's saying, okay, the winner here is the sky. So I'm going to place the horizon line on the bottom half, have more sky, less foreground. Okay, and here's an exact opposite example. Here we've got the water being the winner, okay, and then we've got the horizon line right on that top horizontal line. Another example here, okay, you can see the horizon line kind of is the mountains in the background there, and it's just kind of below that bottom line. And we've also got the rule of thirds because we've got a subject here. This would be no different if you're shooting your friend in front of the school. Okay, you might have the subject off to one side and then the horizon line either across this top line or across the bottom line, depending on which of the two you preferred. So, a quick review. Non-centered objects are visually more appealing to the eye. Okay, and again, some of you guys are going to go online, you're going to show me tons of portrait photos of like famous celebrities that were taken by photographers that are making like hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and it's not applying the rule of thirds. And again, you just need to understand that these are guidelines. So you divide the frame into thirds, kind of like a tic-tac-toe grid, and place the subject near one of the intersecting areas, okay, or on the vertical and horizontal lines. So here, when you're dealing with horizons, place the horizon line on either of the horizontal lines. And for further learning, you can check out the rule of thirds, Wikipedia page. Is quite good and has lots of examples and links for you. One thing I do want to point out when we're talking about the rule of thirds is when you have subjects that are looking not directly at the camera but are looking kind of off of the frame or moving throughout the frame, we need to make sure that the subject is always looking and moving to the open part of the frame, okay? Because when we first look at an image, we're drawn to the subject, and then we naturally, subconsciously, are going to follow the direction of that subject. So just imagine if this guy was turned and facing that way, we would look at this and our eye would be immediately drawn off of the frame. So we certainly don't want that. Here's one more example. Okay, we've got the girl. She's not looking at the camera itself. She's looking off the frame, but she's looking towards the open part. So just remember, when we're dealing with rule of thirds, that the movement or where the subject is looking needs to be to the open part of the frame and not right off the edge of the frame. Okay, I had an extra slide in there. Let's go on to fill the frame. This is a really, really easy concept for us to wrap our heads around. Again, here's a real classic image of a couple of kids in the gathering area, and you can see that the emphasis of this photo probably has nothing to do with all of this stuff going on in the background. It's just about these two, okay? So the question arises, well, why do we care about all this stuff? And we don't, because it is quite distracting to the eye. We want just these two to be the subject of the image. So filling the frame, essentially, you're going to take those subjects and just fill the frame with your subjects. So here is a comparison, right? Same kind of shot. Here we have filled the frame with our subjects. The first thing you'll notice is it's kind of removed all the distractions, and the emphasis is immediate. Okay, we know there's no hesitation about what we're supposed to be looking at. Okay, so here's a runner cross country. Again, you can see that there's a lot going on everywhere, and this guy is making up like maybe 5% of the overall frame. I'm guessing that he is the emphasis, because I can't imagine what else would be. So let's compare that to this guy. Again, it's basically the same shot. The only thing here is we've completely filled the frame, okay, with our subject. Okay, another example of a student out in the parking lot. Again, I'm guessing that the photographer, the intended purpose was not to have all these cars in the background or just kind of this ugly background. Period. Plus, you can see we've got this crazy head or tree that's come out of our subject's head. So a good way of, again, eliminating distracting backgrounds and just placing all of our emphasis on the subject is filling the frame. A great example here of that, just filling the frame with our subject. And I love this example for a couple of different reasons, but the big one here is this is a classic example of some of the images that I receive when students are out photographing events. This is one of our most prestigious awards at the awards banquet, and again, you can see that the presenters and the recipient are only taking up maybe 30-40% of the entire frame, and that's telling me that it's only 30% important. So like, why is all this black important? Why are these balloons important? They're not. Okay, so instead we've got examples like this where you're getting rid of all those distractions, and now we've got much more of an emotional tie-in to the image right off the bat. Okay, so quick review on filling the frame. It makes the emphasis of the composition very obvious. Okay, our eye doesn't have to hunt around to try to figure out what the intended purpose was. You need to ask yourself, like, is the background important in your image? Okay, and if it isn't, then you just need to fill the frame, because it's great at removing unwanted backgrounds or distractions. And again, you can check out, here's a great link from the Digital Photography School for additional learning and examples. The last thing I do want to point out is, if you take an image and you don't follow the rule of thirds or you don't fill the frame, to an extent you can fix the problem inside of Photoshop or your image editor. However, I do want to point out that, again, we want to try to do everything right inside of the camera as often as possible, because going into an image editor adds time. Okay, we want to try to get everything right in the camera the first time. So let me just do a quick demo on this. Okay, and then we'll be all done. So let's just head over into Photoshop. You can see I've got an example here of a girl, and she's kind of in the middle of frame. So let's fix that by applying the rule of thirds. A really cool thing about most of the crop tools now in most of the image editors is that it comes with a built-in grid. So again, I'm just going to drag this out to something about there, and you can see it brings that grid up for me, and that actually looks pretty good. But if I wanted to, I can move this around. The grid is going to move as it moves. Okay, maybe I want to put that right on her eye. Bring that down just a little bit there. That looks pretty good. Okay, click OK. I now have my fixed composition. Okay, and for filling the frame, here's that other example we had before. Okay, when you're dealing with multiple subjects, different rules apply for rule of thirds. So we're just going to kind of skip that right now, and I'm just worried about just kind of my subject matter. This is our principal, Karen Barber, so I kind of want her to be part of the image because she's looking on. So I'm just going to kind of come to here, something about there. I don't think we need this girl down the bottom right. That looks pretty good. Click OK, and you can see now we have a considerably better composition than we did before. Okay, our eye is immediately drawn to here. It's not fighting with anything else, and it is nice that we get the principal in here. So that's it. Filling the frame, rule of thirds, two very easy compositional techniques that are going to help you tremendously in your early learning of photography. And just try to remember that even though you can use Photoshop and Lightroom and Aperture to kind of fix your mistakes, we want to try to get it right as often as we can from within the camera itself. That's it. Have a great day.